What's up, folks, and welcome to Indie Ramble. So, this one's another one that's kind of hard to talk about to you guys because, well, this is a game where just about anything I could say about it could be considered a spoiler because the story is kind of the whole point here. But after playing the Steam Next Fest demo for this a few months ago and getting really excited about it, I've actually managed to finish it. And I did want to talk to you guys about it. So up front here, I'm going to be showing some early parts of the game, very early, as in like maybe 20 minutes in. Unfortunately, you can't jump around between different chapters to give you a little bit of an idea what it's looking for and maybe what the experience is that you're going to have. So I won't be spoiling anything major here, but know that a lot of what you see is what you're going to get here. So this is the Invincible. And it's the first title from a new developer that is made up of a bunch of developers from various Polish superstar devs like CD Projekt and things like that. And it's also published by 11-Bit Studios, who originally started out as a developer, and they still are, but they have become a publisher as well, and they tend to pick a lot of winners. And the look of this game is what really got me interested in it. So as you can see here, it's based on a Polish novel, and it's a novel I haven't read. I have to admit I'm pretty tempted to do so after this because there's some pretty cool premises to this thing. And well, I'm not gonna lie that I'd hope for more out of this, in the sense that I thought this was a little bit more of an adventure game, but honestly, it's a walking sim. So the purpose behind this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the foundation of this thing here. So basically, you wake up with amnesia, which is another narrative trope we tend to see in a lot of Polish games. But you wake up on this very desolate planet with amnesia, and you will start to find out more about what happened as you go. And you're going to find out you were part of a crew, and you were part of a crew of one of these two sort of, I guess, rival factions from, I assume it's Earth. It's never actually said. But the game has this really cool vibe to it, this really cool vibe where it takes place in the distant future. But a lot of the technology and things looks very old school. It's almost kind of like Fallout in the sense that this definitely takes place in the future, but the technology looks almost like Cold War-ish, which I think is maybe what this is a natural extension of, is what happened in the distant future if we still lived in a Cold War society kind of thing.
The area marked by Dr. Krauter.
Let these talk for a
There's
sec.
no one around.
What do you think? Can we land the hopper safely here?
I think so. Solid ground, a large flat area. We won't find a better place.
Entry point? Will it be 50 meters?
So there's going to be a lot of that happening here. This game is mostly walking around and interacting with things and talking to people. Mostly your commander, who is back in your ship in orbit, and you'll be talking to over the radio. So like I said, this is a game where it has that kind of interesting future premise to it. And without spoiling anything, you're going to learn about what actually inhabits this planet, and you're going to try to solve a little bit of a mystery about what it is and try to help your remaining crew members who are in various different states that you have to deal with here. And I'm going to say off the bat, as you can tell, this game is freaking beautiful. This definitely has AAA production value to it. It's made by a relatively small team, but it was a team of AAA developers, and it definitely shows. This game is on Unreal Engine. I'm not sure if it's UE4 or 5, but it is a looker without a doubt. It does make the fans on my 3080 scream pretty good. So it does work my system hard. This is an AMD partnered game, and kind of strangely about it, it being an AMD partnered game, it does have FSR support, and it actually does also have DLSS support, but you can only just turn it on or off. There's no, so I have it turned off here because my 3080 can actually handle things without it, but you can turn on FSR 2.2. You can change the profiles for that, but DLSS is just on or off. There aren't the normal profile settings that you'd see for that, which is, that's odd. It's definitely odd. And I believe it just runs DLSS at the lowest setting, because it definitely took some load off my video card, but made the game look kind of blurry. So if you have the capability to run either without it or with, or you can live with FSR2, then I would definitely do that if you could. But yes, nonetheless, this game is a looker. It runs pretty well. I never had any crashes, and my performance was generally good. I did unfortunately run into bugs occasionally, just little things where I had to reload a checkpoint because something kind of soft locked me or something of that nature. But nothing significant really. So the idea is that you're sort of unraveling this mystery story, and I know I'm just kind of wandering around here, and I don't seem to be doing very much, and that's sort of on purpose, because I don't want to give too much of this away, because the story is the point of this. Now, those of you who have been around for a while know that I have very high standards when it comes to walking simulators, because to me, making a walking simulator as a dev is making a statement that you think you have a game where your story is so good that it doesn't necessarily need compelling gameplay mechanics to back it up. Some of them do it well. There are some walking simulators that I have actually very much enjoyed. There are also other walking simulators, including some very popular ones, that I thought were a little more than pretentious dribble made by auteurs, basically. This one is kind of somewhere in the middle for me. I love this world and this environment. I mean, this, like I said, this game is just a sight to behold. It truly is. And the environments are cool. There are various different places that you'll go to. There are different sort of characters that you're going to meet, a lot of different environments, and some pretty interesting things are going to happen. And as you discover things, as you discover and uncover the plot of this game, it's a very hard sci-fi story, but a really cool one. But this is a fairly long game. It's between 6 and 8 hours, and you're going to spend pretty much the whole of it just walking, and in some cases driving and talking a lot. You do have the option, sort of telltale wise, to make different choices in different conversations, or in some cases you have the option to just not say anything at all. But much like a lot of the earlier Telltale games, those choices are very much skin deep. It will affect in some cases what some characters say in response, but ultimately you're going to end up in the same place anyway. The story has, you know, predetermined paths that you're going to go down, and you're going to end up having, everything's going to go in the same way. You just might hear things slightly differently. There's no relationships that you're going to have with characters that can get impacted by the choices you make. The significant narrative outcome is not going to change that much. There are different endings, but they're largely affected by the choices that you make right at the end of the game. Now, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but I will say that the ending was a pretty big disappointment for me. I don't think it was very interesting, and I think the way it ended was not very satisfying at all. And there were elements of the story in this that I was less than impressed with, only in the sense that sometimes things felt a little bit disjointed, and that the game was either inserting or assuming contextual knowledge of certain situations that you really don't have. And there's some situations where you'll end up where a series of events sort of jumps forward very, very quickly, and relationships with characters evolve much more quickly than they would in real life, to the point where it feels a little jarring, and it feels like that they're kind of speeding things along, which is odd, because there are large sections of this where you're just walking and talking for very long periods, where it does feel like things have been drawn out a little bit. Because as you can see here, you don't walk very fast. You can sprint, but only for short periods of time before your character runs out of, or, you know, runs out of breath and has to slow down. And the driving sections that you'll do in this, you don't drive fast.
Someone's here.
Like, not at all. And it does feel to a certain degree. Now, it could be padding, or at the same time, I think this is a game that does want you to really take things in and sort of take your time a little bit and really soak in the atmosphere and really listen to the various conversations in this and really take some meaning from them and think on some of it, because there are elements in this that are kind of philosophical in nature and kind of ask some questions about the nature of what life is. And I do think, this being based on a hard sci-fi novel, that the game does really want you to think about that. And I can appreciate that. But at the same time, it also doesn't make for a fast-paced or necessarily exciting experience. And that's the problem. Like a lot of games of this nature, it's going to very much depend how invested you get in the story and whether or not you are more mechanics focused or story focused when it comes to your games. I am unapologetically mechanics focused. I love games that tell good stories, don't get me wrong, but if it's not a good game first, I'm probably not going to be that interested. And I did find the story in this compelling, and I wanted to see more of the incredible art and environments that they provide in the Invincible, because it is a gorgeous game and there are really cool things to see and some really cool sci-fi concepts to experience. That said, I could have gotten all that and probably learned a lot more beside by reading or listening to the actual book this stuff was based on. Now, the book doesn't come with the pretty visuals, but I think if you're really invested, if you really see yourself being invested in the story and universe, you would probably want to read the book instead. In the end, with this one, with this, it's a fairly long, compared to most walking simulators, this one is quite long. And there's a lot of conversation. The voice acting, largely, except for one character, is actually quite good. I don't know how much of the writing is lifted straight out of the book and how much of the, especially the dialogue, is somewhat original. But it's overall quite good. There's just no real game here. There's no implicit failure state. There's no real challenge. There's no real puzzles in here. The puzzles is real. What little bit they have with puzzles is really just like pushing buttons in certain orders or finding things sometimes, you know, stuff like that. It's really, it's very basic. And this is a very linear experience, though these environments look very open and you can take different paths or wander around and see things. Ultimately, it's very linear and you're going to have to go in a particular direction to push things forward. And there's rarely, if any, benefit to going off the beaten path and really taking your time and exploring and trying to look into every nook and cranny. There aren't collectibles in this. Sometimes you'll find some additional items or things that you could look at and you'll get a little blurb about, but they don't add anything. Like, you're not going to get more of the story uncovered by doing that. So really, unless you want to sightsee, there's no point in deviating from the game's predetermined path. And once you've done this, you're pretty much done it. Like I said, there are multiple endings, but the endings you get entirely come down to choices you make in like the last 10 minutes. And you can actually, because this game doesn't allow you to jump back and forth between different checkpoints that you've already completed, you can literally load up the last checkpoint, make different choices, and see all the endings in like half an hour. And I know that because I did it. Why the game doesn't save at different chapter points and allow you to go back at different points in time, I don't understand. That seems very odd to me. That's why I'm playing this at the beginning. I would have rather have taken a point more in the middle of the story, but I wasn't going to play another 4 hours of this game. I already did just to do that, right? So, yeah. As you can probably tell, I'm a little bit conflicted on this because I do like this universe, and I love how this game looks. Like, the art in this is absolute top tier. And the game runs pretty well, though. Another thing I should have mentioned at the top, this does have a lot of that dreaded Unreal Engine shader compilation stutter. Epic's got to do something about that. They really do. Usually when you're doing like large traversal, particularly in the vehicles later, you will get large periods of a second where the game's frame rate will just stutter severely because it's compiling shaders, and you can tell. That's really frustrating. But you know, this being a slow-paced single-player game, it's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, would I have finished this if I didn't get press code for it? Yeah, I may have. But at a certain point, I also may have been like, okay, you know, what's going on here? I may have just given up before the 2-hour refund window and just decided to read the book instead. Hard to say. But I also kept playing this hoping that there was going to be like a big reveal or some revelatory event where I was going to be like, oh, geez. And there are a couple of big twists in this and some big discoveries that you will make that make you kind of go like, oh, wow, yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. But none of them are mind-blowing enough to me to necessarily justify the fact that I literally just spent 8 hours walking and listening to two people yak over the radio with dialogue choices that ultimately are meaningless. You know what I mean?
Let's take a look.
Yeah, I don't know. From the production value point of view, this game is absolutely incredible. But I don't know if this... I think this is a cool piece of Polish fiction that they're representing here, and kudos to them for doing that. But I don't know if it needed to be a video game, at least not this kind of video game. I think maybe they could have taken something that presented a more interesting world or more interesting story to present in an interactive form like this, unfortunately. And yeah, I didn't find the payoff very good in the end, and there's just not much game here. But I wanted to present this to you guys because as you can tell, there were elements about it I found interesting, and some people are absolutely gonna like this. Like when I post my user review on Steam, it probably will have a thumbs up. There'll just be a lot of caveats in that, because I could absolutely see why somebody would like this. And I think a lot of people, there is a group of people who absolutely will. I didn't dislike it. Compared to like Dear Esther and Gone Home, this thing is amazing. Between either of those, I think those are two of the most overrated games ever made. And this is absolutely way better than that. But is it my favorite walking sim? Definitely not. And I don't necessarily know how, but I feel like they could have done more with this story and with this fiction than they did. Maybe that would have required... I don't know how strictly they adhere to the source material, but maybe they would have had to take some more creative liberties with the source material to pull that off. I think they could have worked in a few more gameplay elements, or at least tightened up the progression in this so it didn't feel so drawn out, and still been able to tell the same story. That's how I feel about it. But I'm curious what you guys think about it, and after seeing this, if it does interest you. So yeah, you know, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think about this, and if this is something that does interest you. But yeah, that is The Invincible. It is out now. You may find this interesting, especially if you're into hard sci-fi. Maybe give it a look. But again, I think you might be more interested in reading the book. I think I'm probably gonna see if this is on Audible, and if it is, I'll probably wishlist it there, because I am very intrigued to learn more about this universe from playing this. And you know what? That is a very big compliment for this game. So maybe that's a very valuable, maybe that is a valuable thing that this game can provide you, is introduce you to some potentially lesser known sci-fi that you could enjoy quite a bit. So that could be an interesting thing. But yeah, thank you everybody very much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you liked what you saw here, please do all the normal YouTube things. Those really do help the channel out a great deal. And like I said, leave a comment down below. Tell me, does this game interest you? What are other walking sims that you really like? Like, we know some of the common ones like Dear Esther and Gone Home, which I really didn't like. There's also ones like Firewatch, which I actually did like a fair bit. And there's some other ones out there. So what are other ones that interest you? Do you know of any other sci-fi ones? That I'd really like to know, because I love me some sci-fi, and I'd like to see some other experiences in that world. And as always, you can follow me over at twitch.tv/pxabstraction for multiple variety streams a week. I'm actually going to be focusing more on retro games there for a little while, but we do indies there too. And it's a great little community there, and I'd love to see you be a part of it. Thanks again, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Folks, have yourselves a good one. Take her easy.